It's strange looking back, trying to figure out what made me do it. Was it the excitement of the night? The alcohol? Or maybe it was just the fact that I hadn't felt truly seen or appreciated in a long time. It all started on my birthday, and I guess that should have been a sign in hindsight. Birthdays are supposed to be about celebrating you, right? But I wasn't feeling that. I wasn't feeling celebrated or special, and I think I was tired of pretending. It wasn't that things with my husband were bad, at least not in any obvious way. We weren't constantly fighting, there was no screaming or arguing. But there was something missing, something I couldn't put my finger on. It had been a slow build-up, the little things, the quiet moments where we just didn't connect. We'd fallen into routines, and with those routines came a distance I hadn't even noticed at first. It wasn't even a conscious thing. We just stopped talking the way we used to. We had lost the ability to truly see each other. I mean, there were days when I wondered if we'd even be able to talk about anything that wasn't related to bills, work, or what to make for dinner. I had a lot of time to think about all of this leading up to that night, but I kept convincing myself that things were fine. I kept telling myself that we were just going through a phase, that it would pass. So, when my birthday came around, I was ready to have a good time. I wasn't expecting anything extravagant, just a small gathering of close friends. But deep down, I wanted more. I wanted something that would make me feel alive. I had been feeling invisible, like the person I was before we got married had somehow faded away, lost behind the responsibilities and expectations of adult life. I wanted to reclaim a piece of myself that I had forgotten. The night was beautiful, really. The party was full of life, and everyone was happy. There was laughter, music, and the kind of easy-going energy that comes from being with friends who understand you. I tried to lose myself in it, tried to let go of all the weight I'd been carrying around. But somewhere in the back of my mind, that nagging feeling stayed. I felt like I needed more. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like I had been walking through life for so long, numb to my own feelings. That night, I was hoping for something to make me feel. Something real. I wasn't expecting it to come from him. The DJ. I didn't even really know his name at first. He was just the guy behind the turntables, mixing beats and keeping the energy high. But then, as the night wore on, I started to notice him more. I couldn't help it. There was something about him. He had this presence. It wasn't the way he looked, though he was handsome in a rugged, effortless way. It was the way he moved, the way he commanded the room without saying a word. He was confident, but not in a show-off kind of way. He was magnetic in a way I couldn't explain. And when our eyes met for the first time across the room, something stirred inside me. It wasn't love, or even lust. At least not in that moment. It was more like a curiosity, a hunger, a longing. It's funny how sometimes the smallest thing can open a door to something bigger. I didn't mean for it to happen. I didn't plan on it. But as the night went on, we ended up talking. At first, it was just small talk. Compliments about the music, a few jokes about how the crowd was so into the party. But it was easy to talk to him. It felt natural, like we had known each other longer than just the few minutes we'd been speaking. There was something familiar about his energy, like we were both searching for the same thing in that moment, something that would break us free from whatever it was that was holding us back. I didn't even think about my husband, at least not at first. It wasn't intentional, it just didn't come up. It's strange to say, but in those moments I didn't feel like a wife. I didn't feel tied to anything or anyone. I was just a woman, a person in this moment, experiencing something for the first time in a long time, and I liked it. I felt seen in a way I hadn't in months, maybe even years, and as we talked, I could feel myself starting to relax, starting to forget about the things I had been carrying. He asked me to dance, and I don't know why, but I said yes. I'm not usually that impulsive, but in that moment, it felt right. He led me to the center of the dance floor, and I could feel the heat from his body as we moved together. It was like we were the only two people in the room, and even though I had no intention of doing anything other than dancing, I felt a shift inside me. It was more than the music, more than the rhythm. It was the way he touched me, his hand on my back, his fingers brushing the small of my back as we moved together. It wasn't inappropriate, not at first, but it was enough. Enough to make me feel something I hadn't felt in a long time. I wasn't sure what I wanted anymore. Or maybe, for the first time, I was being honest with myself about what I wanted. I don't know when it started to feel different. At first, it was just the music, the dancing, the excitement of my birthday. But as the night went on, I started noticing things that I usually would have dismissed. Things that, in hindsight, probably should have made me stop and think. But I didn't stop. I wasn't thinking clearly, and maybe that was part of the problem. All I knew was that I wanted to keep feeling this way. Alive, noticed, wanted. And he made me feel that. I remember the way his hand felt on my back. It was a simple gesture, but it sent this rush of warmth through me. It wasn't sexual at first. Just a hand placed there, gently guiding me as we danced. But there was an energy between us, something that kept building with every song, every movement. I could feel the heat of his body against mine, our hips swaying together in rhythm, and it was like the world around us started to blur. All I could focus on was him. The music, the crowd, the fact that I was even there at all. It all faded away. It was just him and me, in that moment, lost in the dance. I could feel his breath against my ear as he leaned in to whisper something about the song. His voice was low and smooth, and even though his words were harmless, I could tell there was something more beneath the surface. It wasn't just small talk anymore. There was an intention in his voice, something that made my heart beat faster. I wanted to say something, to pull back, to remind myself of who I was. But I didn't. I let myself get carried away. I was already deep into the moment. But what happened next wasn't something I had anticipated. As we danced, his hand slid down my back just a little more, brushing against my waist, then resting lightly on the curve of my hip. The touch was subtle, but there was no mistaking it. I felt a jolt of electricity shoot through me. My pulse quickened, and for a brief second, I hesitated. My mind was screaming at me to stop, to pull away. But my body didn't listen. I didn't move, and I didn't push him away. I wanted to stay in that feeling, that connection. I wanted to feel alive, like I mattered. And it wasn't just about the touch, I realized later. It was about the attention, the way he looked at me, like I was the only person in the room. Like I was someone he wanted. I hadn't felt like that in so long. My husband, bless him, he loved me, I knew that. But lately, it felt like the spark was gone. There was no fire, no passion. We had fallen into the routine of life. Work, house chores, plans for the weekend. There were no surprises. But here, in this moment with the DJ, there was something different. Something raw, something exciting. I knew I shouldn't be doing this. I knew it was wrong, that I was married, that I had a commitment. But the part of me that was tired, that felt neglected, that was longing for something more, was louder than the voice of reason. I felt guilty for not thinking about my husband, for letting this happen. But I also didn't care. In that moment, I just didn't care. It wasn't even a conscious decision. It was like everything else had faded into the background, and the only thing that mattered was the heat of his touch and the way he was making me feel. And when he leaned in close, whispering something else in my ear, I could smell his cologne, feel his lips almost brushing my skin. That was the moment I lost control. I didn't pull away. Instead, I turned my head slightly, meeting his eyes. And that was it. There was no going back from there. Without saying a word, he cupped my face in his hands and kissed me. It was soft at first, like a question, a hesitation. But then it deepened, and I kissed him back. I remember feeling a rush of heat spread through my chest, my stomach tightening. It wasn't just physical. It was emotional. It was like I was finally feeling something again, something intense, something real. I felt torn in two, but I couldn't stop myself. I didn't want to stop. For a moment, it felt like the world had stopped spinning. Everything around us disappeared. It was just us, caught in that kiss. I could hear the music in the background, but it sounded distant, like it wasn't even part of this moment. And for those few minutes, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Passion. Desire. I felt alive, like I had been awakened from a long slumber. But even as I kissed him, a part of me was screaming. My rational mind was trying to claw its way back in, trying to remind me of who I was. I was married. I had a husband. And yet, I couldn't stop. I didn't want to stop. When we finally broke apart, we didn't say anything. We didn't need to. There was a shared understanding in the silence. I could see the same desire in his eyes, the same need. He didn't pull away, didn't act like it was a mistake, but for a split second, I saw something else in his gaze. Maybe it was a challenge, or maybe it was curiosity. I wasn't sure. All I knew was that it didn't matter anymore. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if I would regret it, or if this was just the beginning of something that would change everything. But in that moment, I didn't care. I felt alive. For the first time in what seemed like years, I felt like I mattered, like I was more than just a wife, more than just someone's partner. I was me, just me. And I didn't know if I could ever go back to being just the person I was before that night. It's hard to put into words the way I felt the next morning. The weight of it all, the guilt, the shame, the confusion. It was like everything hit me at once, and I couldn't escape it. I had been so caught up in the moment the night before that I hadn't fully processed what I was doing. But now, as the sunlight filtered through the blinds and I lay in bed, trying to piece together what had happened, the reality of it all started to sink in. I could feel the presence of my husband in the back of my mind, even though he wasn't physically there. It was as if the memory of his face, the way he smiled when he saw me the day before, was suddenly clearer, sharper. I could hear his voice in my head, asking me how my birthday went, asking me if I had a good time. And the guilt hit me again, a wave of nausea that made me want to curl up and disappear. I'd crossed a line. I knew that. But the strange thing was, I didn't feel entirely regretful about it. Not at first. The feelings I had experienced with the DJ, the excitement, the rawness, the rush of desire, those feelings were still there, lingering. They were part of me now. And that terrified me. Because it wasn't just about the kiss. It wasn't just about the touch. It was about something deeper, something that had been missing in my life for a long time. The connection I had been craving. The attention. The passion. I'd been searching for that spark for months, maybe longer, and in that moment, I had found it. But at what cost? I didn't know how to face my husband after what had happened. How could I? He had no idea, and I wasn't sure if I was ready to admit it to him. And yet, the guilt of keeping it from him, of living this lie, was starting to eat at me. Every minute that passed, every moment of silence, made the weight of it all heavier. That day, I couldn't focus on anything. I went through the motions of my daily routine, barely able to make eye contact with my husband. We barely spoke, and when we did, I could feel the distance between us. It wasn't because he was acting differently. It was because I was acting differently. I felt like I had betrayed him, even if he didn't know it. I felt like I was lying to him with every word I said, every smile I gave him. And I couldn't stop thinking about the DJ. I kept replaying that night in my mind. The way he had looked at me, the way his lips had felt on mine, the way everything had felt so alive. It felt like I had unlocked a part of myself that I didn't know existed. But now, facing my husband, I couldn't help but wonder if I had made a mistake. Was it a moment of weakness, a fleeting need for attention and excitement? Or was it something more, something deeper? I didn't have the answers. All I had were these overwhelming emotions: guilt, confusion, desire. And I didn't know how to handle any of it. Later that night, my husband came to me. He could tell something was wrong, of course. I wasn't hiding it well. He asked if I was okay, if something had happened at the party that bothered me. I tried to brush it off, to play it cool, but the truth was, I was terrified. Terrified of the consequences, terrified of the truth coming out. And then, almost out of nowhere, he asked me about the DJ. He asked if I had spent any time with him, if I had enjoyed the music he'd played. I could feel the tension in his voice, the subtle way he was trying to gauge my reaction. I froze. It was like the world stopped for a second. How did he know? Was he suspicious? Or was it just a coincidence? My heart started pounding, and I couldn't breathe. I looked at him, and I could see the concern in his eyes. He didn't suspect anything. Not yet. But he was looking for something, some sign that I was hiding something. And in that moment, I realized just how much I had already changed. I wasn't the person I had been when I went to that party. I had crossed a line, and now I was standing at the edge, unsure of how to go back. I didn't want to tell him. I wasn't ready to admit it, to explain everything. But at the same time, I felt like I was suffocating under the weight of my own silence. The lie felt unbearable. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I looked away, staring out the window, feeling like I was about to shatter. The silence between us grew, and I could feel my chest tightening. My mind was racing, searching for the right words. But all I could hear in my head was the sound of my own guilt. Finally, I spoke. I told him everything was fine, that the party had just been fun, that the DJ was nice, but there was nothing to worry about. I said all the right things, the things I thought he wanted to hear. But as I said them, I felt a sense of betrayal wash over me. I was lying to him, and the worst part was, I knew it. It wasn't just about the kiss anymore. It wasn't just about what had happened between me and the DJ. It was about what I had done to my marriage. The trust, the connection. All of it felt so fragile now, like it could break at any moment, and I had no idea how to fix it. I didn't tell him about the kiss, about how I had felt in those moments with the DJ. I couldn't bring myself to. Because as much as I hated what I had done, a part of me didn't want to let go of that feeling, the feeling of being wanted, of being seen, and that scared me more than anything else. Days passed, a week, maybe 2. Time seemed to stretch in a way that made everything feel both distant and too close. I was living with a constant knot in my stomach, and it wasn't just because of the guilt. It was the way things had shifted between my husband and me, even without him knowing the truth. I couldn't look at him the same way anymore. It wasn't his fault. He hadn't done anything wrong. But the truth was, I was carrying something that weighed too much for me to hide. The silence between us grew louder every day. I kept thinking about that night, about how everything had felt so electric. The DJ was still on my mind, too, more than I wanted to admit. It wasn't just the physical attraction. It wasn't just the way he'd kissed me, the way I'd responded. It was the way I felt when I was around him, the way he made me feel seen. For the first time in so long, I didn't feel like a wife or someone's partner. I didn't feel invisible. I felt alive, but I also knew it wasn't real. I knew it had been a moment that, in the grand scheme of things, didn't change anything. Or so I told myself. I tried to bury those thoughts, push them to the back of my mind, but it didn't work. They lingered, like a shadow I couldn't outrun. And then it happened. It wasn't some big dramatic confrontation, but it might as well have been. My husband had been distant lately, like he knew something was off. I could feel the subtle shifts in his behavior. He wasn't angry, not exactly. But he was more reserved, less affectionate. I could tell he was waiting for me to say something. Maybe he sensed my guilt. Maybe he just knew me well enough to see that something had changed. Either way, I couldn't keep lying to him anymore. That night after dinner, when we were sitting on the couch in the living room, he asked me again. This time, there was no subtlety. His voice was quiet but firm. He said, "Something's been different with you, and I don't know what it is. I don't know what's going on, but I can feel it. I don't want to keep guessing. What happened at that party?" I froze. For a moment, I thought I might suffocate. My heart was pounding in my chest. I wanted to look away, to avoid the question, to lie again. But I couldn't. The weight of everything was too much. The guilt was suffocating me, and I could feel it spilling out of me in that moment. I took a deep breath. I could see the concern on his face. The quiet hurt. He didn't know what was going on, but he knew something had changed, and I had no idea how to explain it to him, how to make him understand. I started, my voice shaky. I don't know how to explain it, but I kissed him. The DJ, the words felt heavy, like they were tearing me apart as they left my mouth. I couldn't even look at him as I said it. I was ashamed. I wanted to take it back, to undo everything. But it was out there now, and I could feel the silence between us, thick and suffocating. He didn't speak right away. He just sat there, staring at me. I could see the hurt in his eyes, and it made my heart ache in ways I hadn't expected. He wasn't angry at me, not yet, at least, but I could tell that the trust had been shattered, and I knew I had no one to blame but myself. "You kissed him," he repeated softly, as if trying to make sense of it. Why? What happened? I shook my head, my chest tightening with the weight of my own emotions. I didn't have a good explanation. I couldn't explain why I had done it, why I had let myself get caught up in the moment. All I could do was cry, my tears spilling out uncontrollably. I don't know, I whispered, my voice barely audible. I don't know. I was just lost. I've been feeling lost for so long, and I let him make me feel something again, like I mattered. His face softened slightly, but the sadness was still there. You matter to me, he said quietly, but you didn't need to do this. You didn't need to hurt me, and that's when I realized. I had been so focused on what I felt I was missing, on what I needed in that moment, that I had forgotten about everything else. I had forgotten about the vows I made, about the trust we had built over the years. It wasn't just the kiss that had broken something between us. It was the fact that I had gone looking for something outside of our marriage, that I had allowed myself to lose sight of what was important. I'm sorry, I whispered through my tears. I never meant to hurt you. I never wanted to lose you. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. I know you didn't, but you did, and I don't know if we can come back from that. I wanted to reach out to beg him to understand, to tell him that it was a mistake, that it didn't mean anything, but I knew that wasn't the truth. It did mean something. It meant that I had been craving something more, something that was missing, and now I had to face the consequences. I don't know what to do, I said, my voice breaking. I don't know if I can fix this. He looked at me for a long time, like he was weighing everything. Finally, he shook his head. I don't know either, but we can't keep pretending like nothing happened. We need to figure out where we go from here, together, or apart. And that was the moment. The moment I realized that what I had done wasn't just about a mistake or a bad decision. It was about the fact that I had been neglecting myself, neglecting my marriage, and in doing so, I had hurt the one person who had always been there for me. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if we could rebuild what had been broken, if we could find our way back to each other. But I knew one thing. I had to face the consequences of my actions. I couldn't escape them anymore. And that was the hardest part.